New from Bippy Industries, the F-Uton. Perfect for those relatives too cheap to spring for a hotel room, the F-Uton features an intentionally lumpy mattress that pokes guests in all the wrong places. Worried about your hormone-ravaged teen doing unmentionable things in your home? Our patented design features absolutely no lubrication on any of the F-Uton's hinges or connectors, giving off a telltale squeal every time someone moves. Junior will learn so much self-restraint that after he fails out of high school, he could move on to a respectable position as an impoverished monk. Cheaply made to fit anyone's budget, pick up your F-Uton today.
Bippy Industries and its affiliates remind customers that all products are sold as is, and that Bippy Industries cannot be held responsible for any injuries, deaths, or alien abductions resulting from the use of their products. Consumer discretion is advised, though not encouraged. By purchase of Bippy products, consumer agrees to these terms and releases. Bippy Industries for any legal or monetary claims. Use as directed.
I need to get a new background. Does anybody know, like, anybody really good at making backgrounds who's willing to make some for me? I will pay. You guys also missed the customary cat porn on the chair over here. Unfortunately, Loki jumped down and pissed off a little while ago. But in any case, let's recap Wildwood Sanitarium. We could go through the rest of the footage if you guys want. That's just what we live streamed last night to Facebook. So again, about an hour and 10 minutes worth of footage. I'm willing to watch the rest of it if you guys are here. We've got a lot of footage to watch. So just to recap what happened for those of you that came in late. So during the pendulum session, what we discovered is that we were having a conversation with a former male patient at the sanitarium who confirmed that he died before the year 1960, but sometime after 1940. He confirmed that he was alive up through World War II. He was not a combat veteran. And the reason why he stayed behind and the reason why his spirit did not go on to whatever afterlife there is because of this unresolved guilt he had for an incident where he physically harmed somebody else. And then during our question, as you guys saw, for those of you who saw the whole thing, we were able to get him to say that, to admit what exactly happened. And from what we were able to piece together, he shot a man, shot him once. It was not intentional that he shot him. And then the answer that we got during the divination is that he threw him in a river, essentially, got rid of the body that way. And then during the Estes, you heard me say burning, so there's also the possibility that he burned the body. But I don't think it's necessarily true that that happened because the patient before that said that he doesn't know whether or not this person lived or died. He basically shot him, threw him in a river, and then tried to pretend like he never knew anything happened. We asked him multiple times, hey, did anybody figure this out? Did anybody ever approach you about this? And the answer was always maybe. So, unfortunately, he never even really got a confirmation as to whether or not this person actually died. So that's why he is supposedly sticking around. He wants to find out what happened. As you saw, we were able to confirm that the alleged incident happened on July 24th of 1931, which is when the shooting happened, in the Salamanca, New York area. So one of the things that Rex, Andrew, and myself are going to do at some point is we are going to try to research and see if we can find this. We did stop off at the local library a couple hours before our investigation yesterday to try to do some research and find out some history. And unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot out there. This is not a place that has wide-ranging presence in all of the local newspapers and things like that. So I have a feeling it's going to be a little bit tricky to find, especially when we don't really know if this person confirmed died or not. A name that we got a couple times throughout the night was Joe. So maybe this guy's name was Joe. Maybe it wasn't. Again, we have no way to confirm that because we were only able to ask yes or no questions. And I wasn't about to ask 26 questions to go through the entire alphabet. That would just be absolute ad nauseum. So we try to get other information other way. So at least if we go to research it, we've got a window that we can narrow things down. Throughout the night, we had activity going on all over the place. It was pretty interesting because it started out being a very, very slow investigation. Not really a whole lot going on. It was very quiet. I remember when we were doing the tour and then we went and we did an interview with the former owner, or actually the mother of the current owner / former owner, who confirmed. And as we're walking around, it's like we're all looking at each other like this doesn't really feel like there's anything here. This place feels very quiet, feels very, very, I don't know, it just feels like a regular home. Like it doesn't feel like anything special as far as paranormal energy goes. And then as you're there throughout the night, things start to pick up. And as you can see during that session, things are definitely starting to pick up. Hearing footsteps, knocking, things moving around. Sounds like something was walking up the staircase, which for most of that night, we weren't getting anything like that. We'd get these weird knocks and bangs, but nothing that sounded like it was actually walking up the stairs. The exception maybe being Rex when he was doing an isolation experiment. He thought he heard running on the second floor hallway. Rex, if you're out there, correct me if I'm wrong, assuming you're not stuck behind an ad break. So we did have some stuff, but it wasn't really a whole lot until towards the end of the evening. So that was pretty cool. That was a lot of fun. Definitely a place that I want to check out again. It was my second time being there at that location. We are going to be going through our evidence here shortly. And again, I'm willing to watch some of that live with you guys on the stream because we have not watched any of it yet. Because again, we just did this last night. I haven't even been home for 24 hours yet since this investigation. So if you guys are up for it, we can do that. And we can kind of see what we got and see if everybody wants to find some ghostly evidence with me live on stream. All right. So what I want to do to start here with this new podcast is I want to start off by kind of going through a little bit of the history and why it's taken me so long to kind of get back on the bandwagon of doing the podcast. This is something that's been on my list for a while. If you guys don't want to listen to the podcast, that's fine. You can go ahead and jump off now. But for those of you who want to stick around, please, as always, answer or ask questions, participate in chat, and we'll kind of roll with it. So I think it's been about 4 or 5 years since I did the last Ghost in the Podcast episode. And back in the day, we were doing it with Baroness, who is my wife, for those of you that don't know. It was her and I. We were doing the show after having multiple partners that weren't really working out the way that I'd hoped. And we were part of a group called Rivalcast Media. I got into podcasting, just so you guys know my history. I didn't get into podcasting willingly, and it definitely was not my choice. I got into podcasting years and years and years ago when I was in college, which at this point was 2002, 2001, 2002, when I first started doing podcasting. And mostly I was joining my brother's show, and I was just kind of like the color commentator in a way. I would come on and do funny, like little voice impressions. I would do a Yoda, or I'd do the orcs from World of Warcraft, or something just ridiculously off the wall. And mostly I would just tell really bad jokes and sometimes I would come in drunk and, co-host to everyone's delight. And I never really thought of doing anything beyond that. My brother was the one who was really into podcasting. He would do shoutcasts, which are really popular now. But back in the day, it was the start of doing play-by-play of games. And they would do World of Warcraft, and he was on a network that did all that stuff. And then came a day where he and a bunch of other guys decided, you know what, we kind of want to do our own thing. So they left and formed their own channel. And part of that process is he approached me and said, hey, why don't you, and at the time I was going by Baron. I go by Scott now, just go by my name. You can also call me Baron. Don't care either way. He goes, I want you to come on. I want you to do a show on our new network. And I'm like, what the hell would I do a show on? Like, no one's interested in anything that I do. And I was already into the ghost hunting, and I'd already started experimenting with going out and going to graveyards and doing that kind of stuff, although I didn't publicize it to anybody that knows me. Because, it's hard enough to beat a reputation. But he knew about it, and he said, well, why don't you just come on and talk about your ghost stuff? I'm like, you're doing a shoutcast, dude. You're doing a show for fucking World of Warcraft and Warcraft 3. Like, again, who cares about a guy coming in talking about doing paranormal stuff? Like, no one cares. I'm a nobody. But he was really like constantly just hammering it. Like, you have to do this. You have to do this. You have to do this. So I said, screw it. Let's do it. So I sat down with Highlander, who was his co-host at the time, and we started doing the show, and we had a very, very, very rough start. I believe Varyar, for anybody who knows him, was even of the comment of like, I think he even told me at one point, it's like, you know what, your show's not, I didn't think your show was going to make it. Like that was awful, your first couple episodes. And he's right. He was right. If you ever go back and listen to him in the archive, they were awful. They were god awful. But think about it from my perspective. I'm a dude who's like 23, 22 years old, never done podcasting in his life, never sat down in front of a microphone like I am right now without having a partner being the lead person. And I would just kind of jump in every so often with just some, wisecrack, smart ass comment or some kind of weird voice impression. So I never had any experience being a lead, never practiced being a lead. It was more of, you're going to do the show. Okay, come over tomorrow and you're going to do your first episode. Wait, what? That's literally how it played out. It's actually how it played out. So in my defense, not only did I not want to do it, not only did I feel like I was being forced to do it as a favor for my brother, But I also didn't get to pick my co-host, and I got no chance to practice. I got to think of a few topics, and that was it. And it just went awful. But over time, like with most things, you get used to it, you get into comfort, you get in a groove, and you end up taking something that was somebody else's idea, and you find a way to start changing it into your own. And one of the first things that I decided to do when I did the podcast is I said, you know what? I want to take this podcast on the road. I want to be able to do a live stream ghost hunt from a location and do that as a show. I want to make that happen. And it took about a year, maybe not even a year. Bio, you were around. You might be able to correct me on that. I think it was about a year when we had our first Orb Fest. And we called it Orb Fest because orbs are the big joke in the paranormal world, right? Like everybody geeks themselves and wets themselves over getting orbs when 9 times out of 10 they aren't anything worth, writing home about. But everybody gets excited about it. It's like, well, what the hell? We'll go with it. Whatever. No big deal. So we called it Orb Fest, and it was myself and Baroness and Varyar, or Matt, for those of you who know him personally. He was one of the other show hosts on the Rivalcast Media Network. We all went down to the Prospect Place Mansion in Trinway, which is a little farming community outside of Zanesville, in Ohio, near Columbus, for those of you who don't know where Zanesville is on a map, or certainly couldn't find Trinway on a map. And again, probably not that anybody cares the details, but in any case, we went there, and of course, that is where we had our first series of technical glitches where we were told the Wi-Fi would be strong enough to live stream from that location. Definitely was not strong enough. So we ended up doing like an audio broadcast while we were ghost hunting, and it just didn't work so well. People were pissed off and whining and complaining. Okay, fine, whatever. So then we decided, well, the next year, we're going to do this again, but we're going to do it bigger. We are going to do Orb Fest 2 from the Brinton Lodge in Douglasville, Pennsylvania. And we had like 20 people come out. It was awesome. It was such a good time. It was basically our first convention. And yes, that's Loki running around in the background. So be sure to say hi to the kitty. You still have the cup? That's awesome. Yeah, we came up with swag and merchandise that we were giving out for people that came up. We had we had custom made cups that Jen made with the little Ghost in the Podcast and Orb Fest little stickers and stuff on them, which again, I want to bring back for the new stuff, but we're going to get there. So we did Orb Fest 2, and it was a blast. We had a lot of fun. We broadcast it. We did streams of it. We did a video watch-along episode when I had the chance to put an episode together, months later. Like it was fantastic. It was a blast. And that was the last one we ever got to. We never got to do another true Orb Fest event, which is disappointing because that was a lot of fun. But then over this time frame, the podcasting that we were doing started to kind of shift, because the idea from most of the people of the RCM community was podcasting's going away, which now we know in retrospect it wasn't, but game streaming is becoming a big thing. And I thought game streaming was the dumbest thing in the world. I'll admit it. I thought Twitch and everything was stupid, absolutely dumb. But I went along with it because that's what everybody wanted to do. Everybody, at this point I was friends with everybody. We all hung out together. We went on these trips together. Like, fuck it. I can take one for the team. I'll figure out, I'll make this work. I'll find my way of doing it. And it was fun. It was fun doing game streams. And then I did my voice impressions. I came up with like 4 or 5 different characters, and I would switch between them while I was playing games, which, for the community that we had was a lot of fun, but I think it scared off most newbies. I don't think we got like a whole lot of new viewers doing that kind of broadcast, but to me, it was a lot of fun. I loved it. Because again, you got to make something your own, right? So fast forward a little bit to a few years, and Rivalcast Media folds for a multitude of reasons I'm not going to get into. And then pretty much we're all going doing our own solo thing. And as you guys know, the streaming got difficult. It was definitely not as consistent as it needed to be. And eventually the podcast stopped. And then eventually the game stream stopped for a very short period of time. The reason why is because when you spend a lot of time building a community and you end up making friends with all the people that are in it, Varyar and Bio and Lyserg and Vampy and, Deetity and Bubba and, the list goes on and on and on. And you find out that some members of the community that we had were trash talking everybody behind their backs and was like deliberately sabotaging things. And these were people that you brought on as like little part-time streamers as you went on. They weren't even part of the original group. But you hear all these stories in retrospect, and it's like, it's little wonder that we ended up dying the way that we did. But outside of that, it's like, this is a community that you build with all these friends. And now all of a sudden you don't have this, Rivalcast Media was the reason we all hung out. Like, it was the excuse to get everybody together. We weren't always streaming, but we'd still always go into chats and Discords and whatever else we'd be talking, and that went away. Life happens, as the phrase goes. Everybody goes off and does their own thing. And again, no fault of anybody. That's just the way life is. But it destroys over time that camaraderie. So when you do that, then you have to split off from the channel that we were all broadcasting on, start your own channel, and not all the people that were watching on that one carries over to the new one. And when you go from, like in my case, I had some streams, we were doing over 100 people, especially in my Darkest Dungeon days. Like, we were streaming to like 100, 120 people, like live viewing. And we went down to like 5 and 6 and 4. And that was a hard, like, that was a really sobering experience for me. Like, to have that level of success compared to where we started when we were a bunch of nobodies. And now all of a sudden we're back to being nobodies again. And now my friends aren't even around as they used to be. And it just sucks. It's like the motivation to keep up with it just goes away. It's like, at least when I had Rivalcast Media, there were at least 3 or 4 of us that were streaming pretty regularly. So we always had that, like, that way of kind of like keeping each other like motivated and keeping each other going, sitting in each other's chats. Like, it was great. It was a great way to keep you motivated because you had similar friends going through the same thing you're going through, and then you lose it. It's gone. And that's hard. Like, that's really hard to stay that self-motivated when for 2, 3, 4 years you had a group around you that we were all holding each other accountable, and it was awesome, and it worked, and it was great. So admittedly, from my perspective, that was a very hard adjustment to make. I did not have an easy time making that adjustment. And to some extent, I still don't, if I'm being honest with you. I still don't have an easy time making that adjustment. And that's part of the reason why it's been so hard to get back into the swing of streaming. But we'll get there, because I'm skipping a step. So now we're going to talk about Ghost in the Studio Productions. My baby. This is my baby. So one of the things that I realized over the years since I last broadcast, and I'm gonna be a little more forthcoming with my thought process and what was going on with me than I probably should. But I've gotten to the point now where talking about what you go through can actually be a strength instead of a weakness. But I had, and in some ways still had, a very, very, very huge depressive streak. Like, it was bad. It was really bad. And you can ask Jen sometime if you don't believe me. It was really bad. It's better, but it was bad. And it got to the point where I started seeing a professional because I needed to kind of help. And it wasn't all just streaming based. A lot of it was also personal life based. That I'm not going to get into details on. But it came to just this really sobering moment of like, what I had as my identity that was really driving me is now gone. So now I got to find something else. Because Rivalcast Media in a lot of ways was replacing something that I felt like I was missing in my life, which is purpose. I love doing shows. I love doing podcasts. I love doing game streams. I love doing ghost hunts. I really love doing ghost hunts. Like, I'm into all of that stuff. And when I didn't have Rivalcast Media anymore, it's like I lost all access to that. So then I started doing ghost hunts because I still doubled down on that. And I met a couple people that I worked with at a local mental health agency. And I invited them to ghost hunt with me for several reasons. The biggest which of being try to get the cost down doing ghost hunts because it gets very expensive to rent these places out. And I started doing videos again. And they were really bad. I actually ended up pulling most of them off YouTube at this point. So if you go back, try to look for the old episodes, you're not going to find them. I might put them back up someday, but not right now. So we started doing these ghost hunts, and it really wasn't clicking for the videos the way that I'd hoped. And a lot of the feedback I was getting is a lot of people did not like the videos that I was doing. And the interest was just at subpar, awful level. So again, I'm kind of down in the dumps again. And these were people that I was ghost hunting with that I wasn't really friends with outside of the ghost hunting. I always got the impression they had no interest in being friends outside the ghost hunting. Very much got that vibe. And Jen was very much in agreement with that. She told me more than once, like, these people don't like us. Like, we're a means to an end for them. It's like, yeah, I'm getting that impression too. So it really wasn't going anywhere. And then as the fates have it, one night, I was just sitting there and I said, you know what? I want to try to rebrand myself and try to create a new purpose. And that's where I had the idea for Ghost in the Studio Productions, which is now the company that I'm pretty much running, that we are doing all of our ghost hunts and what this podcast is going to be attached to. Everything I'm doing is being run out of this. It's basically my own version of Rivalcast Media. Because I decided, you know what, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to find my purpose again, I need to do it my way. I feel like most of the things that I've done in my life that have ever had any kind of meaning to me were byproducts of somebody else's vision. My podcasting, somebody else's vision. My game streaming, born of somebody else's vision. My whole being in this field in the first place, somebody else's vision. My personal job of working in the mental health field, I feel was a divine calling. I feel, again, not my decision. It was, but really I felt called to do it. It wasn't necessarily like something that I decided, is what I'm trying to get at. So it's like, I'm at this point in my life where if I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to put through the effort, and I'm going to battle my depression, and I'm going to try to take the reins of my life again, I got to do it my way. No more living my life by somebody else's vision. No more taking what somebody else is saying that I should do or should be and living by that. I've had that my whole entire life. My mother was probably the biggest culprit of that. And I love my mother to death. Don't get me wrong. And this is not me trying to talk shit about mom. But my mom's philosophy of everything was, it's going to be done my way. It's got to be done my way. If you're going to do this, you're going to do it my way. You're cleaning your room, done my way. You're doing this, you're doing it my way. It's like my whole entire life, my way was never good enough. My way was always bad compared to somebody else's. And in a lot of ways, I still experience that in my personal life. It's like, your way has to be this. Well, it's like, to hell with that. Why? I'm 40 fucking years old. Why do I have to live by any of that anymore? I don't know. Is anybody out there in Chatland? I don't even know if anybody's still watching this or listening to this, but has anybody else in Chatland ever had that realization? Like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I living my life at 40 years old to the whims of somebody else? Why does that mean so much to me? It's like, well, part of it is because it's a pattern at this point, because you've lived with it for so long, having to, your life going in that direction. And you just have this moment where it's like, why the hell am I doing this to myself? It's like, my mom doesn't live here anymore. My brother's no longer part of my professional life. He's still part of my personal life. He's my brother. He always will be. I love the guy. He's my brother. But as far as the ghost hunting and the broadcasting and the game streaming, like, he's not part of that anymore. I have nobody in my life for the first time telling me what I should or should not do, or what I should or should not be, or that my way is not good enough. And when I had this realization, because I like to be very, very self-reflective, like, I've gotten very, very good at being self-reflective. I know I am not the world's smartest guy, but I believe I'm wise as fuck. Like, I think I have developed a lot of wisdom over my experiences in the last several years, probably the last 11 years especially. Since being a mental health professional in this field, I feel like I've developed a lot of wisdom, because you see a lot of the worst parts of humanity in my job. You see a lot of the good stuff too, don't get me wrong, and you get to be responsible for helping some of that good stuff get created. But for the most part, your starting part, like outside of law enforcement and the military, we see a lot of shit, and doctors and nurses, we see a lot of horrible shit. I have a lot of post-traumatic stress from my job. And I can say that because the diagnosis changed, and that goes into consideration now. But again, I'm not going to go down that road. Maybe one day, but not tonight. So you have this moment where it's, I don't have anything that I need to stand up for anymore. I feel like I've got all the stress and pent up rage in a lot of ways for a vision that doesn't even exist. A vision of who I am based on something that doesn't exist. So I said, you know what? If I were to do this my way, if I were to rebuild myself from scratch in the field of things that I want to do, what would that look like? How would I want to do it? And that's where the idea for the Ghost in the Studio was born. I already had the Ghost in the Podcast. That was my podcast show. And I wanted to kind of keep that trend. So I kept thinking, Ghost in the what? Ghost in the what? So Ghost in the Studio Productions. Like, eventually it just kind of clicked. And I said, you know what? This is going to be a production company. I'm going to create my own production company. And I'm going to make the content that I want. Or I'm going to bring people on that are making content that I'm interested in seeing them do. My goal long term for this is to be a big time actual studio where it's not just my shit that's getting out there, but I'm also producing other people's shit. And we're making this a thing. Again, what Rivalcast Media originally intended to be, that's what I want to create. But I want to do it in the realm of the things I'm interested in, which is the paranormal, which is horror, so on and so forth. So that's where the genesis of Ghost in the Studio came from, was that realization of, I'm going to create something that's mine. And if I'm going to do it, here's how I'm going to do it. And the first thing I did is I broke down, I decided to write out, because one of the things I've realized in life is we all spend way too much time looking for the answers, like the correct answer, right? We want to have like the meaning to everything, like the meaning to life, the meaning to purpose, so on and so forth. We all spend an exorbitant amount of time thinking about that kind of stuff. But what we don't realize is the reason why none of us get anywhere, the reason why that is so hard, is because no one spends the time thinking, what is the correct question? How are you supposed to get the right answer to anything, including your purpose and your meaning, if you're not asking yourself the right question? And what is the meaning and what is the purpose isn't necessarily the right question. So instead, the question I ask myself is, if I'm going to do this, what does it look like? And I wrote it all out. Kind of like wrote out my own personal mission statement in a way. What is my company going to be? What do I want to do as far as content? What do I feel like I'm good at? And what am I ultimately interested in? And when I had all that written out, then my next step is, okay, what are the things I got to do to get close to this goal? And then I wrote those out. So now I'm giving myself like a guide to how to get to where I want to go. So the first thing I decided with Ghost in the Studio is I got to bring back the game streams. So that's what I did. Now, unfortunately, as a clinical director of a mental health agency and now as a clinical supervisor, it's hard to have consistent time because you do a lot of crisis work because you've got a lot of staff. At one point, I had like 80 staff under me. At this point, I have, I think, 12 or 13 staff that answer directly to me, but then I also oversee another 40, close to 40 for case consultations and what to do with clients. So I still have like a pretty hefty involvement in our company with what we're doing. And as a supervisor, I'm always on call for anybody in the agency if another supervisor is not available or if my own staff need help. So it's not always easy to get a consistent schedule. I'm working on that. That's always a goal, but I think I've got a plan for that, but we'll get there. So that's when I started doing the game streams again. And that's when a lot of you guys who are still around, like Shoe Clear, I know you've been around for a little bit. Bio, you've been around forever, and I love you for it. KPN, you've started coming around a lot more in that time frame. But I decided to kind of, Sel Barton, she's been around forever, although I'm sure she's probably gone forever because of how like often I don't stream anymore. But I started going back to the game streams periodically because it's like, I need to at least start building a connection and build up my motivation to do this. I need to start building a community. At the same time, this is where the divination part starts. And I don't think Rex is still here. So Rex doesn't know. Well, Rex already knows the story, so doesn't necessarily have to be here for this. But I went to a public ghost hunt at a place called the Medicine Seminary. And anyone who's been around for a long time, you know how much I love that place. You know how much I talk about that place. You know how much how I have this story that I'm going to finish at this damn place one of these days. We'll talk about that later. I have an episode planned out for Madison specifically that we'll talk about that then. So that's where I met Rex. Rex and another guy by the name of Jarrett, who was in our Oglays Village episode. I met them because they were working there as volunteers. They were working for the owner. They were going around, making sure that people had what they needed, going around making sure the place is safe. And I was in my favorite room, the room with the hole in the floor where the body was allegedly buried. For those of you who've been around, you know that story. It's a good story, so you're going to want to stick around for when I be able to tell that one again. So Rex walks in, and he walks in with Jarrett, and we strike up a conversation. And next thing you know, it's like we're ghost hunting together, even though they're supposed to be working. And at the end of the night, we decided, you know what, let's try teaming up. So we exchanged contact information. We said, hey, let's give this a shot. Now, if you've ever been to a public ghost hunt before, you'll realize that this shit happens all the time. People exchange contact information. Hey, if you're doing on this ghost hunt, invite me. I'll come with you and I'll invite you to mine. No one ever invites anybody anywhere because it's always one-sided. It just turned out that group that I was originally ghost hunting with had a plan or made arrangements to go to the Oglays Village, which again, that episode is up on the YouTube channel right now if you want to go watch it. They ended up having to back out at the last minute, like all of them. The two of them that I was ghost hunting with, their significant others, and then their friends all backed out. So now I've got this huge investigation, 28 buildings in this area by myself. And I also don't have anybody to go with other than, my wife. But 2 people and 28 buildings, not realistic. We're going to be able to do much with that. So I decided, I reached out to Rex and I said, hey, I know it's last minute, but if you're interested in teaming up, I need some bodies. Would you like to come out and join us? And he did. And Jarrett did. And that's been, that's pretty much been the course of everything that's happened since then. Because that ghost hunt went so well, and because we had so much fun and just enjoyed his company as much as we did, Rex is now a permanent member of the Ghost in the Studio Productions. I consider him a partner in a lot of ways when it comes to investigating. Now, my company and my business, I make the ultimate decisions, but when it comes to an investigation, he's earned the right to have as much respect and authority as he gets. He's my number 2. Especially since Jen's working on her doctorate and is working full time. She doesn't have the time to be around as much as she'd like to be. Through no fault of her own. She's busy exploring her life, and more power to her. She's earned that right. And Rex has stepped in, and he's been a fantastic number 2. So since then, the Ghost in the Studio Productions has been doing a ghost hunt almost every single month for the past year. We've been doing at least one a month, which is the most in that time frame that I've ever done. I've never had a reliable group of people that I could have go with me on a ghost hunt that I didn't feel in some way, shape, or form were just using me for something. And that's nice. It feels like I'm a step closer to what I feel like I'm missing from the Rivalcast Media days. And that's having a community, that's having friends, it's having people you actually want to do this stuff with that you enjoy hanging out with. It's like, even if we were to hang out outside of this, we would have fun because we've done that. And you guys coming back more for these streams also helps that. And having the Discord is now helping that. And it feels like we're getting back to having that community. And that's what I really want to build. And that's my big goal. My first goal going forward is we got to rebuild that community. So step 1 was get back into game streaming. Step 2 was get back into ghost hunting. Step 3 was being able to start building a community. And now we're at step 4, which is getting back to doing this consistently. And that's what we're going to talk about now, because that's my plan going forward. So I know that's a long story. I appreciate you all sticking through it. And I'm glad to see some of you in chat had very similar experiences with the, what the hell am I doing listening to all these people? It does make me feel good knowing I'm not alone. Hopefully this makes you feel good knowing you're not alone. And hopefully some of the things I'm talking about can be an inspiration for you for whatever it is you want to get out of life, because life essentially is what you make of it. But I strongly believe that the question you need to ask is, what do I need to do to get closer to where I want to be? So that brings us to the community part, or the consistency piece. So my goal going forward is I want to try to stream at least 3 days a week, 2 game streams, and then 1 doing a podcast. In addition, Rex and Andrew, who's now joined us, he's one of Rex's friends, cool guy. You guys saw him on the Wildwood Sanitarium live stream that we just did. We are now also going to be trying to do a ghost hunt once a month. And we're going to try to make this like a permanent thing with ongoing episodes. I have been teaching myself how to edit. I also have somebody that also does a little bit of extra editing for me on the side for effects and things that I don't feel like I can do. Because again, I'm self-taught, self-trained. I really don't know what I'm doing outside of watching YouTube videos and just figuring shit out. And that's basically what my goal is. So the goal right now is let's get to being consistent. And so tonight originally was not going to be a stream night, but I was sitting here and I'm uploading video from last night's ghost hunt. And I said, you know what? If I keep talking about this future date, then I'm finally going to get off my ass and do this stuff. That date may not ever happen. It just might not. Nature of the beast, right? How many times have we all made ourselves that promise? Today is the day I am going to do X, Y, and Z. And then 2 weeks later and you haven't done shit. Like, we all do that. We all do that. People make money off of it. Gyms make money off that this time of year. January 1st, all these people make these great, New Year's resolutions and spend thousands upon thousands of dollars buying these gym memberships. And like less than 30% of the people actually use them. So they make a shit ton of money off that. Off of that, I'm going to do something in the future. And then it never happens because life happens. There's always going to be an excuse that's going to come up and stop you from doing what it is you want to do. but you got to double down and find that one reason why you got to do it. That's the thing that you got to look for. Again, it all depends on where you focus your attention. So I was sitting here and I said, screw it. You know what? When the last video finished, I said, fuck it. I'm going to go live tonight. I got nothing going on tonight. I'm home. Wasn't planning on doing it. I was going to load into V Rising and screw around for a little bit, but I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to want to do this podcast for like 3 years. I keep talking about it. I've got 4 episodes planned out in like page by page detail. And I just said, screw it. Let's go live and do it. And here we are. So if it's not exactly the smoothest of episodes, you know why, because unfortunately I'm a laissez-faire, fuck it, let's go for it kind of guy. Planning's not necessarily my strong suit, but I'm working on it. I'm getting better at it. So that is the long story as to how we got to where we are today with Ghost in Studio Productions, what my plan is going forward, and how I'm going to try to get there, at least in terms of being around more often. I also plan on being in the Discord chats a lot more often, consistently. Again, trying to be in there 3 times a week, hanging out in the actual voice chat rooms for people who want to come in and hang out. Some of you have already been taking advantage of that. Please do. You always feel free to hit me up. And I want to get this back to feeling like a community again. And for those of you out there who have stuck with me through thick and thin, have been around from the very beginning, or even those of you that just discovered me for the first time, I want to figure out what kind of community do people want to be a part of. So if you got ideas and you got suggestions, or you want to kick out things that you think the group would love, do it. Throw it out there. Join the Discord chat. Email me, ghostinthepodcast@gmail.com. Hit me up on Facebook. I've got Ghost in the Studio Facebook now. I've got the YouTube page, Ghost in the Studio. Noticing a pattern here yet with Ghost in the Studio? I am always open to suggestions because I'll be the first to admit I don't know everything. Truly wise people, truly smart people understand the one thing that all smart people know is that they don't know everything. So throw it out there. If you guys got ideas and suggestions, I do that a lot. I don't usually get a lot back, but if you ever got them, I'm listening. So in terms of the podcast, let's talk about what this is going to look like, because there's going to be some changes to how the podcast is going. So back in the day, it was a 2-person show. Because of Jen's schedule, that's not going to be a reality anytime soon. And I'm not going to put pressure on her to do a podcast when she's got 60 million things she's doing. That's not fair to her. I already know she really wants to do it because she talks about it. We'll get there. We'll get her on if and when we can. But for now, more than likely, it's going to be a 1-person show. I do plan on bringing Rex and Andrew in periodically to do some guest spots. They don't currently have the setup that I do, and they live about an hour away from me. So it's not realistic they're going to be able to come out here every single weekend or every single week to do a show with me. So we're going to get them in when we can. I've already got topics and stuff picked out for them. We have some emailed questions I have for them. I'm going to answer some here in a few minutes that I've gotten sent to me personally about ghost hunting and all that kind of stuff. We are going to focus a little more on doing real life horror stuff. I haven't really had anybody that's been interested in doing the films and movies and books and things like that, that I would like to do reviews on. I'm going to try to bring that a little back, but that's not going to be as much of a focus, at least for the considerable future, until I can find somebody else that's also interested in watching that stuff. Haunted eBay. We're going back to Haunted eBay. I'm sorry. I had fun with Haunted eBay. Haunted eBay is a fun way to fuck around. If you haven't ever done a Haunted eBay segment, you're going to like this, I promise. So we'll go back to that. I plan on bringing that back. We are going to go through emails and questions. We're going to do that every single episode as well. That's going to be a segment we're going to spend some time on. And then I also got a whole bunch of skit ideas that I would like to film that we are also going to be doing here in the near future. Jen and I have been sitting around jotting down a whole bunch of ideas. Honestly, what really happened is Jen and I were sitting at dinner the other night, and we're talking as we usually do, and we're laughing and cracking up. And once again, we both sat there and we looked at each other like, you know what? We just need to friggin' record one time of us sitting down having dinner and just the off-the-wall conversations we have. And there's a skit, because we always have like these awesome ideas. And we sit there, it's like, that would make a great skit. So we're going to do it. We're going to put our money where their mouth is. I'm going to put all these green screens that I've got behind this monitor here that you can't see. I'm going to put all these to work finally. And all my light fixtures and shit. I've gotten to the point where I've gotten as far as I can with the things I can get. So we're going to use them. We're going to figure this stuff out. I am dedicated to making this what I want. And that's the running theme for Ghost in the Studio Productions and what the future holds. It's no longer going to be about somebody else's way. It's going to be about my way. If you have a suggestion, great. But that's all it's ever going to be for me is a suggestion. I'm not going to get dictated to anymore. Those days are over. Ghost in the Studio Productions is now my vision. Whether it succeeds, whether it fails, or somewhere in between, it's on me now. Because one of the things that you have as a benefit when you've got everybody else making decisions for you is you never have to take the responsibility for when it fails. But you also don't ever get the credit for when it succeeds. And you can't have success if you don't risk failure. And success, by the way, you decide what success is for you. And that's another problem that I had. I was always letting people dictate what success meant. Well, no more. No more. I know I came up with my own criteria to know whether or not I'm going to be successful with what I'm working towards. And that's what I'm going to shoot for, come hell or high water. So for those of you that are in for the long ride with me, welcome. For those of you that are like, fuck this, I'm out, deuces. But that's the way it's going to be from here on out. This is now going to be Baron von Gosu's vision going forward. All right. So with all of that said, I want to get into some of the questions here. So these are some of the most common questions that I get working in the field as a paranormal investigator, but also as a mental health professional. So the first question that I always get, and this is one I was just literally asked the other day by somebody, which is kind of hysterical. It's like, yep, I definitely want to address this one, is how does a mental health professional get into the paranormal field? I've had supervisors ask me that question before when they found out that I was into this stuff and through roundabout conversations. And usually it comes like they mention some old insane asylum and then I go off talking about the history of the place because I just love history. It's just, I'm a nerd for it. But I'm like the off the wall weird history that no one else really pays attention to. Like that's the shit that I like. Again, I'm weird. I make no apologies. I am what I am. So how does a mental health professional get into this? And the short answer is, I don't know. Like that really is the short answer. Like, I don't know. I never considered being a mental health professional, like being linked to why I got into this. But then when I thought about it, it's like, you know what? Actually, it really does. It really, really, really does. So my story to getting to paranormal investigating, and I will make this short because I'm already long-winded and I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing my ranting about my history and all that shit. The short version is when I was a little kid, Ghostbusters was brand new. Ghostbusters came out in 1984. I was 2 years old in 1984. I remember my dad had the movie on VHS that I don't know if he got from, I think he got it copied somewhere because video stores just kind of do that like shady shit where they would like make copies of VHS tapes for you for like a small fee. I don't know if that's how he got it, if he like bought it off somebody. I don't remember. To be honest, I have no clue. But I just remember we had it. And I remember being a little kid and all I ever wanted to do was stay up late and watch Ghostbusters. I remember there was like birthday parties or parties that we had at our house. And my parents were trying to convince me to go to bed, and I wouldn't go to bed unless I got to watch the ending scene where Stay Puft Marshmallow Man shows up all the way to like the Ghostbusters blowing him up. Like I had to watch that and I was able to go to bed. I remember my birthday where I got the Ghostbusters action figures. I remember I got the four Ghostbusters, I got Slimer, and I got the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. I still have the original Stay Puft Marshmallow Man that I've had since I was like 3 or 4 years old. He's on a shelf right over here. For anybody who's watched my ghost hunt videos where you see the bookshelves that I do the interviews in front of, that's him. He's got like the little halo because we put him at the top of a Christmas tree one year. Is our little angel. Because, you know, that's how we roll here. I remember it. I remember my mom tossing a black bag onto the table. I remember it was hot as hell because my birthday's in June. And I remember pulling him out and I remember being so excited. I remember I had this white little box, this white little tub that I kept him in. I remember the lamp stand in the living room that my parents had that I would use is I would put the Ghostbusters on the middle row and then I would have like Stay Puft like he's walking up to it, like he's walking through the city. I still remember my original storylines that I had from my Ghostbusters toys. That is how much I loved those freaking action figures. Like my parents were amazing when it came to birthdays and Christmases. I very, very, very rarely didn't get what I really wanted. And they went through hell to get it because you hear the stories as you get older. They start telling you about them. I love that. So Ghostbusters, I always wanted to be one. Then, as I got a little bit older, this TV show called Sightings came out. And fell in love with that one of the first paranormal reality shows. Then MTV's Fear, which, by the way, I just bought I just got DVDs of that recently that somebody made for me. And I was just always interested in it. I was always fascinated about it. I never had a paranormal experience when I was a kid. You think you do, but realistically, no, I didn't. So I don't really have anything that necessarily got me into it. And then the mental health side, I just felt like always called to be in the mental health field. Although I originally thought I was going to be a psychiatrist. I just decided I didn't want to go to med school for 8 years and, not graduate till essentially now. If I had gone to med school when I started graduate school, I would be graduating like right now. It's like, I'm already in my 40s. I don't want to be starting my professional career in my 40s. I want to be like already established, which now I am. So realistically, the paranormal stuff predated me getting into the mental health field. But some of the questions that I get from other mental health professionals is where other people in the field will think psychosis and schizophrenia and that you think ghosts, and that's weird to us. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's very weird to you because those two things aren't mutually exclusive. Like they look very, very, very different. But again, I'm not going to get into too much details of it. So with my backgrounds, I've gotten pretty good, I think, of being able to tell when I think someone's got like a mental illness issue and when I think there could be something legitimately going on. And the reason, like one of the things to kind of like tell you, like I can play for you recordings of ghost voices, of shadow figures, of weird lights and weird anomalies. Like I can show you video and audio of things that I've recorded, but I can't do that for your psychosis. I can't record the voices you hear in your head if you're psychotic. Like that's number one. Number one is I don't just take it based on face value that there's actually something happening. Like I've got to be able to prove it. Like otherwise it's just a story, and everyone's got a story, but stories are meaningless if you don't have ways to back it up. So my other avenue of looking at it is, and this has kind of shaped my way as being a paranormal professional, is I look at everything now through the lens of trauma. So for those of you out there who aren't familiar with the mental health field and don't have experience like I do, the word trauma is thrown around haphazardly and has lost all meaning to the average person. The average person thinks that somebody calling them a name is traumatic, that somebody breaking up with you is traumatic, that you not getting the latte you want is traumatic. Somebody breaking up with you is traumatic. No, that's not clinical trauma. Okay. That's not clinical trauma. That's the key. That's the difference. Clinical trauma means that you either survived or witnessed a life or death event or a perceived life or death event. And now it also means that you've been exposed to other people that have had that stuff happen to them so much that it eventually causes damage to you. That is clinical trauma. That is the definition of clinical trauma. I cannot diagnose as a mental health professional a trauma disorder if you do not meet at least those criteria. There's more criteria you need, but that's the starting point. So it is not trauma unless you have survived or witnessed a life-threatening event. So these are your war veterans, your rape survivors, your natural disaster survivors, your physical abuse survivors. People that have experienced significant neglect. Those are people that have had like diagnosable clinical trauma. So now if you look at the mental health field, or now if you look at the paranormal field, let's take that same definition and let's extrapolate that out to spirits. What is the one thing we know about death? It's traumatic. You're dead. It killed you. Whether you're shot, whether you died of natural causes, whether it's cancer, regardless, you're dead. And there is a significant trauma in my belief, in my theory, that happens in that perspective. Now, in the living world, you have to be a survivor. But in the paranormal world, you obviously didn't survive it. But if you're a ghost or a spirit, wouldn't that still technically leave an impression on you in some way, shape, or form? So the way I approach the paranormal field from a mental health background is these are people who are spirits who are dealing with unresolved trauma. That's the connection why they're here. And this video that I just played for you guys at the Wildwood Sanitarium, to me, reinforces that. Because now we've got a guy who's saying that he feels guilt because of something that he did that he would like to make right, but he doesn't know how to do that. And this guy passed away before 1960. So that to me lends credence that maybe my theory about the trauma relation to spirit play is accurate. And that's something I want to follow up on. So every time I do a ghost hunt, every time I start trying to engage with spirits, that is always what I'm trying to assess is there some sort of trauma thing that happened that we need to process out and try to help this person with? And again, this is my theory. There's many different theories on the paranormal, so don't just take my word for it. Do your research, you have your experiences, and come up with your own. But that's how I approach it. That's my background of how I managed to take the mental health side and the paranormal side and link it. And I think emotions are like energy. Spirits are supposedly composed of energy. So it makes sense is that if you had an extremely emotional moment, that might create a lasting impression in an environment or a ghost. So to answer that question in the long form, that's how I rationalize it too. And that's how I got into it. That's how I linked them, is looking through that trauma lens, that trauma background. All right. The next question I got, why do we do so many Estes sessions? That's a damn good question. All right. So the reason we do so many Estes sessions is because it's one of the best ways to try to rule out what I call false positives. So let me give you an example. In an Estes session or in a spirit box session, I could play a spirit box. I can go get one of them right now and turn it on for you. And you're going to hear a whole bunch of gibberish that comes through that. The human brain is designed to take a whole bunch of random noise, just a whole bunch of random stimuli, which is like noise or pictures or whatever that have no sense to it. And your brain puts the pieces together to make sense of that, to make something happen. That's why sometimes you'll think you'll see faces in like abstract art. It's actually how abstract art works entirely. Is your brain looks at whatever this abstract thing is and it creates and assigns meaning to it. So when you have a spirit box, you do the same thing. You take it and your brain assigns meaning to it, and you might not be really getting a legitimate answer. It might just be random gibberish that your brain's kind of tricking you into thinking it is something. So an Estes session is like the easiest way to kind of rule that out. So with the headphones, I can't hear any questions anybody's asking, so I'm not going to be biased from or looking for a specific answer because I don't know what the question is. I'm just going to repeat whatever I think I'm hearing through the spirit box. That's why we do a lot of Estes sessions, because it's a great way to get a control over what you're hearing and what you're experiencing. And as you can see through a lot of our videos, it works pretty well. I mean, there's times where it doesn't. There's times where you're just getting gibberish or random nonsensical stuff. There's sometimes where it even seems like spirits are talking amongst themselves. And then this brings me back to your earlier question about the time traveler thing. I've known people that have had experiences doing Estes sessions where they feel like they were talking to themselves from the future. Now, are they really? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. But there are some people that legitimately believe that is what their experience is. Because, again, if you look at the paranormal field and you go a little bit further, if you don't necessarily believe it's the afterlife, then you look into the idea of string theory, where there's multiple realities, all these different little dimensions, and there's points where they kind of cross over a little bit. And you could be picking up bits and pieces from either other points in time or other dimensions. Again, it sounds kind of out there and weird, but that's the theory that people have. And string theory is actually a theory in physics that is studied and in some cases widely believed. In the paranormal field is no different. But again, no one really knows for sure. It's just some experiences people think they have. So Bio, as much as I know you're kind of joking about the time traveler thing, there really is a segment of people out there who think that is a legitimate reason why this paranormal phenomena happens. But again, your guess is as good as mine as to whether or not that's actually true. I have not had that experience. But I know others who claim they have. So that's why we do so many Estes sessions. How do you hunt ghosts? That's a shotgun. And you can hear Jen yell with a shotgun from the other room. No, we don't hunt ghosts with a shotgun. Although that'd be kind of cool if we could. I don't think it'd be that easy. So this is where you get the distinction of ghost hunts versus paranormal investigation. Really, they're mutually exclusive. The biggest difference in my experience is people who do ghost hunts are looking more for a thrill. People who do paranormal investigating believe themselves to be actual researchers and experimenters. And that's not to be like a knock on anybody. It's just, that's just the differentiation. It's like the easiest that I can think to make. I call it ghost hunting because that's just the vernacular most people are familiar with. Again, they're pretty much interchangeable, but those in the field, that's how they kind of look at the difference between the two. So how do you hunt ghosts? You're not really hunting ghosts as much as you're trying to catch evidence of ghosts. So that's what you're doing. Instead of shooting something with a proton pack, which I would love to be able to do, instead it's a camera or it's a voice recorder or it's some other piece of equipment that we got to try to capture evidence that there is something actually happening. That's what we mean by hunting ghosts. Where was the next one? I lost my spot on my page here. Can I come with you on a ghost hunt? I don't know, maybe. We are looking to do some public events that we are going to sell tickets for. We had some success with this previously. We are looking to do one in the spring, but we're not ready to announce location or prices yet. But that will be coming up for those who are interested, and you're more than welcome to come up. But that also leads me to do a little bit of shilling here. So I'm going to do some, not necessarily product placement, but some, a little bit of business work here. So in order to do paranormal investigating, to give you guys an idea, most places you want to get, if you want to get a private ghost hunt where it's just you and whoever it is you want to bring, it's usually between a few $100s to a couple $1,000s, depending on the location and the size. So it gets expensive, plus travel costs and everything else. So what Rex and I decided is that we came up with a Patreon for those of you that want to donate on an ongoing basis. We get all sorts of additional content and things like that on our Patreon. But we also heard that people don't want to do an ongoing subscription and they don't necessarily care about the bonus stuff, and that's fine. So we also came up with a GoFundMe. You're going to find those links here very shortly down in the chat. For those of you that are listening to the podcast version of this, they'll be in the description of the episode. If you would really like to help us create new content so that way we can offer it free for everybody, because anything that we make is going to be offered for free, this is going to be the way that we're going to try to afford it. So the GoFundMe is set at $3,000. $3,000. It's like a really small number compared to most that I've seen. The reason for that is because all we're trying to do is be able to afford 12 locations. We just want to cover our entrance fee to get 12 locations. We're almost at 2. We've almost made enough that we can cover 2 locations. We've already got the 12 picked out. We're already set to go. We know where we want to go. But that's how we're trying to afford this because, again, this gets to be very, very, very expensive. And paying for all this out of pocket is getting harder. So if you'd like to help out, you can either join Patreon and get a whole bunch of extra free stuff, which is the way I recommend, because who doesn't like getting free stuff? Like behind the scenes videos, additional content that doesn't get released, specialty videos that are released just for Patreon, like that kind of stuff. If you want to do the GoFundMe, that's cool too. I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth, but anything that we get through either of these, it's all going to go towards directly making more content. That's it. We do have some stretch goals. If we actually hit our goal, we do have some equipment upgrades we'd like to make or some additional locations we'd like to do. Our biggest thing that we'd love to be able to do is be able to get one of these big locations that costs like $1,000 or $2,000, like Wildwood Sanitarium, the Mansfield Reformatory, places like that, and do a big investigation where everybody who donated can come for free because we'll have enough to pay for the venue flat out. We'll get pizza for everybody. Like that's our big goal is we want to do a big event where everybody can come for free. So if you'd like to make that a reality and you want to come on a ghost hunt, and you want to do like a big jail or a prison or a hospital, that's one of the best ways that we're trying to do that. So please check those out if you want to help out. If you can't afford to, no problem with that. This is not something I'm demanding, but if you still want to help us out, like, comment, and subscribe to our videos on YouTube and TikTok. Yes, we have a TikTok. I'm not thrilled about it, but I'm told that's what you have to do to be competitive in today's environment. So we have a TikTok. That's going to be more of Rex's thing going forward. I do most of the YouTube stuff. So that's another way you can help us in just getting the word out there. Join us on Facebook. Look for Ghost in the Studio Productions. Get updates from there. Join us on Discord. Those are ways you can be part of the community and help us without actually having to do anything financially. And that's perfectly cool. Like we're good with that. Because again, we just want to be able to build a community and do this and make this sustainable. That's our biggest goal. All right. So with that being said, I'm down to the last question here. And that is, this one's more of a media one. what horror movies in the past few years stand out to you the most, or be ones that you would recommend? Because everybody knows that I am a movie snob. Yes, snob. I am very hard on movies, especially horror movies, because I hold them to a higher standard because there's so much crap out there that poorly represents what horror should be. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and give you some of my picks of movies that I'd recommend you check out. Number one, the best one that I have seen in a very long time would be Talk to Me. That is a fantastic freaking movie. If you have not seen it, do yourself a favor. And if you like horror, see it. It's excellent. Strongly recommend Talk to Me. Godzilla -1 would be another one. I don't necessarily consider that a horror, although the way this one's filmed, it's definitely going more in that direction. Fantastic movie. Probably my favorite Godzilla movie, arguably of all time, but it's definitely up there. And I'm a huge Godzilla fanatic. To give you an idea of how big of a Godzilla fanatic I am, I once asked an AI program, what is my spirit animal? And the answer I got back is Godzilla. No human being in my life has ever understood me as well as that AI did. So there you go. From the guy who has Godzilla as a spirit animal, trust me when I say Godzilla -1, fantastic movie. I'm trying to think what else. There was another one that I was trying to remember. I believe it came out for streaming. I don't think it actually made it in theaters. I think it was a Netflix. No, it was a Netflix movie. Love and Monsters. That was the name of it. So it's more of a comedy. It's an end of the world type comedy, but it also has a little bit of horror stuff to it. I thought it was excellent. I thought it was very well done. So Love and Monsters, if you have Netflix, strongly recommend it. Check it out. Great movie. So that'd be Talk to Me, Godzilla -1, and Love and Monsters would probably be the three that I would tell you right now. I strongly recommend. I'm also a big fan of the Conjuring universe. I love the first two Conjuring movies. They're two of my favorite ghost-related movies. Strongly recommend those. The Annabelle movies, the second two are okay. The second Nun was better than the first, but still not a great movie. So I'd recommend those. Those are pretty decent. And then we get down to Skinamarink. So Skinamarink, to me, is a pass. So for those of you that have never seen Skinamarink, it's a movie that was done that was mostly to be very experimental. It's very light on story. It's basically the tagline or the plot of the movie is a 4-year-old and like a 5-year-old wake up and their parents are gone and all the doors and windows of the home have disappeared. And it's basically about this entity that's like torturing these kids. But the way that it's filmed, you never actually see anybody in like full frame. It's always like looking at like a ceiling. So you see like the very tops of their heads, or it's like looking at a wall. And a lot of it's very perceived. And the idea itself is not a bad one. It's just the movie goes on a lot longer than it does. And the whole way, the way the guy's trying to go with it just gets very tedious. So I'd say Skidamaring's a pass. I got asked about that one specifically. Apparently that was a TikTok sensation and that's how that got popular. You know, it is what it is. Oh, Infinity Pool. That was the other one I was thinking. Infinity Pool was pretty good. If you like Mia Goth, you'll like Infinity Pool. And that's it. That's really all I had as far as the podcast stuff goes for this episode. Again, this is kind of just want to get a reintroduction and kind of get off the ground going. I hope this kind of lays out for you guys a little bit about what the plan is. I hope you have a little more understanding of where I'm coming from and what the struggles have been. But it's going to be a little different this time. The podcast is going to have a little bit more of a serious bent to it. It's not always going to be as jokey as it used to be. And the reason for that is because I felt in a lot of ways that I was kind of like, I was a horror version of what my brother's show was, like Emperor's Court Lights. And I don't want to be that. I think the reason why the show never really grew and why we had a pretty good sized audience. We averaged like 500-600 downloads an episode, which is pretty good when you're a nobody. But a lot of that was from an established fan base that was looking for a particular type of broadcast, similar to what my brother did. And I have some things that are like him, but I also have things that I do my way. So these episodes will have some funny bits to it. We'll joke around like we usually do, but there's also going to be a lot more serious topics and a lot more things I want to cover, especially as we go down the road of trauma and the paranormal. Because for those of you who are fascinated with the paranormal like I am, I think this is just an interesting thing to explore. And I want to get other people on and talk about what their theories are and how they look at the paranormal field and what their approach is and kind of share ideas and critique. I don't know if you guys know this, but if you're in the paranormal field, there's like the civil war going on right now between people that are all about demons and wanting to get really popular and focus on like everything being this, like the CSI of ghost hunting, like all flash and no substance. And then you've got the group over here that are the snooty ones who are like, oh, we're better than everybody because we're actual researchers and we're doing this. And there's good people and good arguments on both sides. You know, some people would call me a fence sitter, and call me that if you want. That's fine. But I don't want to pay attention to that noise. I don't want to get into the Civil War. I don't want to get into grandstanding and bitching and whining about what everybody else is doing, because I really don't care. I'm getting honest with you. I don't give two shits about how you want to get your audience. I give two shits about what your theory is, what your logic is, and how you're going to approach that, and what are your ideas, and what ideas can you offer me. My best advice to you is always seek out people that have a different point of view as you, and treat those experiences as if they've got something to teach you. Like, I learned that from Jordan Peterson, and I think that is a fantastic way to approach things in life. Find out people who look at things different than you and talk to them under the impression that they have something to teach you. That doesn't mean you agree with them. That doesn't mean you're going to let them convince you. It just means there might be something that you can take away that you did not know before that you will find useful. I want to get people on the show that are like that. I even want to get people who are non-believers on here and talk about why they are non-believers. What would it take for them to have an open mind? Because a lot of people that I've come across who are non-believers are very close to this. They think I'm stupid. Like, you always get like that snooty, like, oh, I didn't realize I was smarter than you. Kind of the same way, like when they find out people eat at McDonald's. Oh, I didn't know I was better than you. You eat at McDonald's. As if going and getting that poor excuse for not being a milkshake from Starbucks that has more calories than my entire McDonald's meal combined. But hey, you know, you do you. But I even want to get people like that on and just find out, what would it take to convince you that this shit is actually real? What would it take to move the needle? And I just want to hear what they have to say. There's some people that I know that are brilliant engineers or work on satellites that have different ideas of, well, if the paranormal is real, then maybe this kind of stuff would be beneficial. I'd love to get them on to talk about some of their ideas. Mr. Lead Haxer, who I've not talked to in forever, is one of those guys who came up with an idea to test different frequencies for not just EVPs, but which is electronic voice phenomena. For those of you who don't know, those are voices or sounds that you don't hear when you record them, but they're on your recorders when you play them back. Or even through spirit boxes. Can we come up with a frequency that gets spirits to be able to communicate through? Can we find what that magic frequency is? And that was ideas that he had. It's like, I would love to pick his brain more about that. I thought that was a really interesting way and something we can experiment with. So I want to open this up and make this something that's more legitimate and not just us screwing around, telling jokes, and me getting drunk. Because for those of you that were around for a while, you know we used to have a drinking game every episode. If the chat could get me off topic, I'd have to take shots or take chugs or whatever. And those are fun to do when you're in your late 20s, early 30s. Probably not something I'm going to be doing now that I'm 41 years old. Sorry, guys. Not going to be looking to get blitzed on stream anymore. Those days, unfortunately, are long gone. And honestly, I don't think that really is going to be a lasting fan base anyway, because all they just want to do is get you drunk. And I've seen some people do that where every time they get a donation, they take a shot, and it's never gone well for the person. They pass out on stream. They end up in the hospital or worse because they really blow their limits and they don't learn. And I don't want to be like that. You know, one of the things about being wisdom means you learn from the mistakes of others, so you don't make the mistake yourself. So not going to be going down that road anymore. We're done. So with that being said, the next episode for the podcast is going to be coming up next week. I will be releasing the time for that on the Discord channel here in the very near future, because I got to hammer down a date that I want to do it. And then whatever that date and time is, that'll be the date and time for new episodes. We'll do live broadcasts, because in the Discord, that's what you guys asked for. People want to be able to do live. They want to be able to do comments, and I'm cool with that. Nothing wrong with that. We might move it over to Facebook, or not Facebook, but YouTube rather than Twitch, because I don't know if Twitch really has an interest in doing podcast stuff anymore. So we might move that to the YouTube channel instead. So you might want to subscribe to the YouTube channel just in case. And that's it. If you got any questions, send them to theghost.thepodcast@gmail.com. You can direct it to myself or Rex or Andrew. I will make sure they get it, and we will record answers, and we'll put it on here for you guys to hear, and we'll try to get them on as soon as possible. Same thing if you got any topics you'd like us to discuss, if you got movies or TV shows you'd like us to watch, any books you'd recommend that we read that we can follow up on, please send them. I would love to do some watch-alongs here in the near future. We are going to do some watch-alongs of actually some of our episodes here in the near future and give you some running commentary about some of the stuff that was happening off-screen that didn't make the episodes. Because when we make an episode, we generally have about 60 hours worth of footage on average. between all of our static cameras and handheld cameras, and you guys get about 50 minutes of that total. And actually, you get even less than that because we film interviews after those events. So it's 60 plus hours of actually investigating, plus like another 3 or 4 hours of interviews that we then have to put together. So realistically, you're probably getting around 40 minutes of actual footage out of that 60 hours. So there's a lot of things that don't make the cut that you guys don't hear about. So we want to make sure that we can address those too, and give you some commentary about what's going on in those situations. Give you that kind of behind the scenes peek. And then Patreon's going to get some videos of behind the scenes stuff too. Because again, that's extra content that those people who want to invest can get. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you very much for hanging out. Appreciate it. We will see you guys next week. You can also find other episodes of the podcast on Podbean. That website address will be coming out here very, very shortly. And right now I'm heading out like a fetus. So have a very good night. And remember, if anybody asks if you're a god, say yes. All right, guys, don't actually go anywhere yet. That was just the ending for the podcast. I'm not actually stopping streaming yet. Well, I might. All right, so guys, real quick, before we all go, I want to ask you guys a question about game streams. All right, so I'm going to go through. I need you guys to tell me what kind of games you guys want to watch. So here's the list of the games that I got. I picked up Alien Dark Descent, which is a team-based shooter set in the Alien universe. I got Amnesia the Bunker, which we're going to play at some point for sure. Death in the Water, which is a first-person shooter set underwater. We're fighting monsters. Hellpoint, which is a game that's like a futuristic Dark Souls. Remnant 2, which is again is Dark Souls but with guns. And V Rising, which think Diablo. Think of a cross between Diablo and Minecraft, but you play as a vampire. So let me know. You don't have to do it right now, but if you wanted to throw in Discord which game you'd like to see played first, please let me know, because that would really help, because I need to start stress testing and see if this computer will handle that with the stream. And I can do that if I know what game you want to watch. So let me know, and we'll go from there. KPN, I'm not playing Pacific Drive unless someone wants to get it for me, because I'm sorry, dude. That game does not look interesting to me. But if somebody were to gift it over, I would definitely play it on a stream. But I can't promise I'm ever going to get it. Sorry, I'm just being real with you, KPN. I'm sorry, man. It is what it is. All right, now for serious, I'm going to leave. I'm going to take off. Have a very good night, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. And I will probably be on, if not Sunday, I'll probably be on Monday because I'm off on Monday. So I might be on in the afternoon. I will let you guys know. All righty, guys. Have a very good night. Thanks for watching. And remember, if anybody asks you if you're a god, say yes.
Well, that about does her. Wraps are all up. Things seem to have worked out pretty good.
Game over, man. It's game over.
Thank you for coming. I'll see you in hell.
Well, that certainly could have gone better.